for your birthday present, I've made a presentation of the trip that you made overseas back in 1964. You can actually run this on your iPad, but I've made you a video just to make it easier, so I hope you enjoy it. I'll send you a link, and maybe Finn or Tony can help you look at it. Down the bottom, there's some like arrow bars that you can use to get to each slide in the same way that I'm doing it now. So happy birthday, Dad. So this is about a world trip that you did back in 1964 with your friend George Imlach. When you are running it on the iPad using Google Earth, you can use your finger to move around the globe and see the trip that you did. This is a photo of the two of you on board the ship. So just going back to where it all started, you were brought up in Levin, and this is a photo that I found of Levin back in 1940. Maybe it looks familiar. At the time, Levin had just under 5,000 residents, and New Zealand was just about 1.6 million as well. So I said that you were a small town lad from a small country. So you took an interest in radio and studied at Horowhenua College, and using Google Earth you can see the street map view of Horowhenua College as it is now. And then you said that you completed an apprenticeship at HMV, and then once you did that you went to the Big Smoke in Wellington to work for Philips, and in here I've got the original building where Philips was, which is now residential. I'm sure you know that. But what I did also find is a photo of a expo that happened not in Wellington but Levin actually, and it happened to have some Philips stuff there, so maybe you remember going to that expo at the time. That was in the I think it was in the early 60s. So then working at Philips gave you a great opportunity. They told you that if you made your way all the way to Holland, you could attend a training course on servicing television. So that became a great idea and reason to go travelling overseas. And I found this photo of the Philips headquarters building in Eindhoven back in the 1960s, and you can see that it's still there. They've even still got the Philips logo on top. So take a look. Going back to home in New Zealand, in the 1960s was when the Beatles came to fame, and when you did this whole trip, the Beatles were touring through America, and you even got this photo which was taken in America. They also had the presidential elections going on at the time. I think it was President Johnson who got voted in, but these guys were saying, hey, let's vote Ringo, because they've gone crazy for the Beatles. Anyway, the Beatles were very much of your era, so I've chucked a little song in here for you. Oh, let me press play.
You say goodbye, I say hello. Hello, hello. I don't know why you say goodbye, I say hello.
So yeah, you said goodbye to Wellington, and the Beatles said hello to Wellington. And coincidentally, Mum, who you hadn't of course met yet, would also leave Wellington not long after and live in Australia for a while. But this is all before you guys met. So to go overseas, you had to first get to Auckland, and George's dad was a taxi driver, which is good. So you told me that he took you in his taxi all the way to Auckland. I couldn't find a photo of the taxi, the Wellington taxis at the time, but this is a die-cast model of one, and that's what they look like. So next up, you went to Auckland and you got on the Oriana, and I found this brochure of from the P&O Orient of the time, and that shows the route that you took. So if you look at the white one, that was basically the one that you took to North America. I think it might have also been the one that you took to get back as well. So the first stop was going into Suva, and then it went up to Honolulu before making it to North America in Vancouver. And then you also continued, you got off at those cities, but you continued on the boat south and got off at San Francisco. So I got another photo here of the Oriana. So yes, Seattle and then San Francisco. And that's where you took this pretty awesome photo of the two of you in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. Really great photo. And then after that, you continued to Los Angeles, where George had some family friends in LA, and they were nice enough to take you all the way to San Diego. This is the Capitol Records building, which still stands. And this is a photo of it back in 1964. And around that time, the Beatles would have gone to that building to sign a deal with them and become very, very, very famous. So next up, we've got this funky picture of you about to go south of the border. I'm looking at the numbers on the houses and guessing that you dressed up like this when you're still in LA maybe, but anyway, getting in the mood for going to Mexico. So yeah, you would go all the way to San Diego and then do a day trip to Mexico to Tijuana. This is what the Mexico border looked like in 1964. Looks quite leisurely, and if we take a look at what it looks like now, you'll see that it's quite busy. A few more lanes going on there. So after that, you started using your Greyhound ticket. So back in New Zealand, you arranged a very popular at the time 99 days for $99 Greyhound bus ticket, which meant that you could travel as much as you can for the next 3 months, and that's exactly what you did. And yeah, you told me about how you slept on the bus and went to many places, and when you actually look at it on a map, it was quite the journey. So we've got like Las Vegas and Grand Canyon, Salt Lake City, Denver, Wyoming, all the way over here to Duluth, Minneapolis, Chicago, Detroit, and then going into Toronto. You got the Niagara Falls there on the Canada crossing, and then going down into Washington, and then you went all the way south to Miami, and then back up again to New York. And when you look up America in 1964, one of the famous things is the New York World Fair, which they were holding. And I did find that out when I was putting this together. And then you sent me this photo. Sure enough, you actually went to it. So that's pretty cool. It'd be great to hear some stories about it. I heard that it was they made it. There was no expense spared. They made it a big one. So yeah, after New York, you got on the Queen Elizabeth, not the Queen Elizabeth II, but the first, which at the time was the largest ocean liner in the world. and you made the journey, the transatlantic journey to London. And you took this really good photo with the Queen Elizabeth, and you can see the New York taxi cabs, they're yellow ones. It's a good photo. And then once you got to the UK, you and George got yourself a Mini, and you worked in London, and then used the Mini to do weekend road trips around England and UK, including Scotland and Edinburgh and Wales. And you also told me about working there in the service van, and here you can see some quite nice houses that are obviously afforded their own TV at the time. And while you're working there, you told me about the house where you were living with other New Zealanders, and how some of them were these the folks in Three who were becoming quite popular at the time, and then that allowed you to go to some of the London bars that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to get into. So they were good people to know. And I managed to dig up this vinyl that they had. So maybe that's a familiar face for you. I couldn't get the actual song of them singing, but I did get a cover of it. So here's someone singing that song.
A hammer in the morning, a hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer about the love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
It's a great song, Dad. I like the message in it as well. If you do, I'll send you a link to that song so you can get a copy of it. But if you want to do it within the presentation, not a lot of these images have a little next on them, but this one does. And if you go next, you can see the video there. But yeah, what's also interesting is that it wasn't just the Folkestone Three that you met there. You also got to meet this guy. So Bruce McLaren went on to become a very famous race car driver, if not the most famous race car driver in the world has ever seen. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that story, Dad, and what it was like, because that's a very famous person to have met. So after you guys finished up working in the UK, you told me that you got the car on a boat and took it on the crossing at the time, which was from Harwich to the Hook of Holland. I'm not sure if it was this boat, but this is one of the postcards from the 1960s to go there. And then once you got to Holland, you went to the headquarters in Eindhoven, and they asked you to go to Groningen to their service centre, and then that's where you did some work for them, and then also did the training course. This is a photo of one of the Philips buildings in Groningen. I'm not sure if it was the one that you're at, but it'd be interesting to hear if it is. And yeah, you told me that you would take weekend trips into Germany, and then on one of those weekend trips, you ran into a bit of trouble. So the story goes that you were in the East German side of the border, and unfortunately crashed the car, and it was completely totaled. And I guess what makes this story particularly interesting is that this is back in the time when the Berlin Wall was in place. So that must have been a bit scary to try and get yourself back into the right side of the border. Another story I'd love to hear more about, Dad. But anyway, you guys made it, and you also managed to get insurance back on that car, and that's where you purchased a new Ford Anglia, which I'm guessing looked a bit like this one, and went for another epic road trip. This time covering almost as many places you saw as you did in America. Brussels, Paris, Bordeaux, all the way into Spain, Madrid, Barcelona, and then going into Monaco, into Italy, Pisa, Rome, Naples, Florence, and then coming into Venice there, and then Austria, Innsbruck, Switzerland, Bern, Heidelberg, Germany, going north, Cologne, and then finally back into Holland. And then that was the point where you headed back to UK and finished up, and then got on a boat called the Himalaya. You've got a photo of it here. And then the Himalaya would take you all the way back to New Zealand, this time going to some very exotic places. So one of those stops was Port Found. I don't know if I got the pronunciation right. And I didn't check with you if you went to the pyramids, but I know that Cairo is pretty close to there, so didn't see any photos, but I'm guessing you might have. Either way, here's the pyramids, and this is what they look like now. And yeah, they haven't really changed much in the last 3,000 years, so maybe we don't necessarily need to have the photo. Next stop was Mumbai. I'm taking a guess that this was taken in India. It's possible it was Malaysia. And moving on, you went to Malaysia. Again, a bit of guesswork, but I think this was Georgetown. These houses look familiar. And then next stop was Singapore. This one I know is Singapore because it's Tiger Balm. And then after that, homeward bound. So you stopped off in a few places in Australia on the way, but the final stop really before New Zealand was Sydney. And you managed to get a photo of the Himalaya with the Opera House in the background. And at the time, with the Sydney Harbour Bridge in the background, but at the time the Sydney Opera House was only just being built. So that brings us to New Zealand, where you finally made it home, and then you returned to Wellington. I put in a quick photo of the Wellington trams as they were at this time. And also, I haven't got the exact timing, but I know that Mum had only just returned back from Australia as well. But of course, you still hadn't met, but it was only a matter of time. And that's what happened. You and Mum met one night at the Empress Ballroom soon after returning overseas. And I'm guessing that was part of the conversation. It was like, hey, just got back from overseas. And a few months later you'd marry, and then it's family. So I hope you enjoyed that, Dad. I do want to finish off just on a bit of a reflection. You sent me this photo of yourself when you were at the border between the United States and Canada in Niagara, and you sent it to me after I'd posted a similar photo of me crossing that same border on Facebook. So I thought I'd just put a little note here and say that a journey of 1,000 miles, or in this case 1,000 miles and 80 years, it always begins with a single step. So I think there's a lesson in life with that you start with some ideas and then you really just have to do it. And here's the photo that I posted on Facebook of me at Niagara Falls, crossing over from the United States into Canada. So when you sent me that photo, I really liked it, Dad. And yeah, I guess another note that I put is that the journey doesn't always turn out exactly as you planned, but you just never know unless you try it. And the reason why I put that is that my original idea for this presentation was really just to make a map of where you want, and just talk about the actual places and not so much the story. But then the more I looked into it, I realized that the important bit is the story behind it and not so much the places. So that's where I finished up. But if you do go online and you look at this project, you can actually go to all the places and visit them. I'll put them all here. But as I said, as I did it, I realized that you're going to enjoy a video a bit more and it might be a bit easier. So I hope you enjoyed the video, Dad, and the birthday present. And I hope that when you get time to look at it on the iPad, that you also enjoy that as well.